Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about The Final Cut. And this movie came out in 2004, starring Robin Williams. And I thought this movie was pretty bad. I was not entertained in the slightest. I found it to be very dull, with an endless amount of scenes of nothing happening, basically. There were points where the cuts were just too quick to make out what was going on in specific scenes. And the only entertaining parts of this movie for me was when it was funny bad, and that only happened at a couple moments. Robin Williams in the movie was fine in it. I didn't really get much from his performance. I didn't really feel like he cared all that much. But out of everyone in this movie, he probably gives the best performance in the entire film. And there's a lot of bad performances, and I just don't believe anyone as their character. Mostly because they don't really have a character to play. Like, everyone in this movie is very underdeveloped. Like, they don't develop any of these characters properly whatsoever. Just random things are happening, and I just don't care about any of it. The concept of the movie is all over the place and doesn't make any sense to me, especially when you really think about it. And I'm not even going to get into that because that's going to take up like an hour of me trying to discuss why it just doesn't make sense to me. And with this movie having absolutely nothing going on in the story or with the characters, the scenes just feel interchangeable. Like, you could change the order of any of these scenes and the movie would be absolutely no different. If all of that wasn't bad enough, none of the characters are likable or interesting. The story, same thing. The split screen, which happened at a couple points, it was unnecessary and distracting. The pacing for this movie is really slow, and it doesn't give you anything to soak in. There's no interesting themes, and any theme that could be interesting on paper, they just don't build on it. And also, it's just been done better in other movies. Like, I just kept thinking to myself, man, like, the things that this movie is trying to tackle, it's just a worse version of something like The Matrix, where it's like you're being controlled or ignorance is bliss, etc. I just kept thinking to myself, this movie has a couple things going for it, but it just does nothing with these things. And despite this movie being incredibly short, an hour and a half, it wastes a lot of time, and the plot of the movie doesn't really get going until like half an hour into the movie, which I guess that's an okay place to start the plot. But once it happens, it just feels like, okay, we're having this now. And even with it going on, like, nothing interesting is happening. And it kind of just feels like the story only goes when it feels like it. That's pretty much how I felt the entire movie. And I kept thinking to myself, what exactly am I supposed to care about here? And much to my surprise, I didn't care about anything in this movie. And also, the ending to this movie was the most stretched out thing I've seen in quite some time. It just kept going and going and going. It felt like Return of the King, but with none of the build up to make that ending satisfying. There are a couple moments where you could classify it as dark, but the way the movie handles it is just so sloppy to the point where it just becomes comical. And aside from the funny bad parts, which there's only a couple, like I've said earlier, there's nothing really memorable about the movie. Like, I can't remember one line of dialogue. I can't remember one entire scene on its own. Like, all of it's just practically been eradicated from my head. And another movie that is kind of like this in terms of like concepts being like really big is Minority Report. I'm not a big fan of that movie, but the way things were handled in that movie were infinitely better and more entertaining. And without going into my issues with the concept making absolutely no sense, that's about all I have to say about the final cut. It was bad, it was boring, poorly acted, nothing memorable in the story, characters, music. Movie's poorly shot, too many close shots, sometimes it's poorly edited. That's pretty much the whole movie. It's just nothing happening for 90 minutes. And I would recommend watching Paint Dry for 90 minutes instead of watching this movie because it might be slightly more entertaining. So with all that being said, I'm going to give The Final Cut a 1 out of 10. Thank you for watching my videos. As always, if you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below you thought of The Final Cut and my social media links. They will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see you when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for Chariots of Fire. So look forward to that, but until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day.